Hi folks, welcome to the Ambassador Talks, and I'm delighted to introduce the guest this week, which is the new CEO of, and I'm slightly biased here, the greatest charity in the UK called Disability Direct, Louise Moss. Louise, introduce yourself, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Oh, it is a pleasure to be here. You have to excuse my slightly croaky voice, but it's not because I've had too many cigarettes before I got here. But I've been a bit under the weather, but I would not have missed the opportunity to talk with the ambassador and talk about really how we ended up collaborating together work-wise and how I ended up taking on the baton as the group CEO of Disability Direct.
And it's, I think I'll talk on behalf of everyone when I say congratulations
Thank
on that
you.
appointment. It's great that I'm able to talk to my successor and support you in any way that I can. So, Louise, tell us a little bit about yourself, your background, and why you chose to be the group CEO.
Well, it's like anything. I think there's different things that happen in your life that you don't know how they lead you to where they lead you to. And I'm a great believer in trusting the universe and knowing that most of our experiences are leading us somewhere that we're supposed to be.
Yeah.
I had I was a stay-at-home mum. I was very lucky to be able to be at home when my children were young, and always quite entrepreneurial, always, had things going on, always interested in business. And then when my youngest was 3, I went back to work in a corporate environment, and I did really well, and worked myself up to in a very senior position in a big organisation across the property sector and financial services sector. And you look on paper, careers going great, earned lots of money, made lots of money for shareholders. I was going places,
Yeah. Yeah.
And I did enjoy it. It was very fast paced. But at the same token, I think you realize when you are very directly making money for other people, um, it does leave your soul a bit cold at times. And I had very fortunately helped a couple of people fill out attendance allowance forms, and it changed their lives. That was probably the first trigger. I call it the barrel effect for me in
Yeah.
my career and what led me to work in the not-for-profit sector. Um, it's the barrel effect and then a catastrophic accident that happened to me and my family, which gave me direct experience of disability, real live lived harsh experience of that. And all of that led me to, I don't want to work in this place anymore. I need something that uses my skills, that allows me the chance to make as big a difference as I think I can.
Yeah.
And so the Beryl effect was, by helping Beryl fill out her attendance allowance forms, I helped change her life. I genuinely helped change her life. I still get emotional today about that because it is something that I will never forget. She phoned me up and the tears just,
Yeah.
it was
And that's
massive.
one of the most powerful experiences you can
Yeah.
feel when it's when you're doing something for somebody else and you're not getting anything for it. That's the incredible thing, and that your lived experience will probably have helped
Yeah.
in making that decision. So, well, it's great that you are the CEO of DD now, and tell us about what I mean. You've been in the role for a couple of months, and I know it's been a bit of a baptism of fire. Hit the ground running, and that's sometimes I've always found that's the best way to start a job.
Yeah.
But what have you learned so far? What do you think the issues, the hot topics, the hot potatoes in the disability movement?
I think it's a changing time, actually, in the disability movement. And I know from collaborating with people I've only just met in some guises and people that I've known for a few years in others with that real lived experience. And it's understanding for me, is where we can make the biggest difference,
Yeah.
where we get the most bang for our efforts to improve and support disabled people to live independent lives that they choose. And I think that's the point as well. It's about choice. It's not about gratitude. It's not about being grateful anymore. It's a right. It's a right. It shouldn't be a fight. And I think for me, there's a huge education about the social model of disability. I didn't know about it myself before my accident. I didn't know what it was. And yet then I felt like a statistic of it failing was my working life, certainly, and elements of my social life as well. But that was quite protected. But my working life was shocking, actually. It really was, which again is I think that's the biggest opportunity we have, because there are so many bright and fabulous entrepreneurial disabled people and disabled customers out there who want things to be different. Absolutely. And they want it to feel different. And I want us to do everything we can to help champion that and support people, whether that's getting mentors for them so that there's none of that, we've seen it all, whether it's on... We're getting better, I think, as a society where we've got more representation. But again, there's so much more lacking from a education on neurodiversity or depression as a disability, and how mental health and the impact of what COVID has done to our society, and to stopping people feeling they can be confident going into work and they've got value and they shouldn't be scared of benefits and navigating that world.
You've hit on a real kind of important topic there in terms of mentoring, because I at the moment mentor around 6 or 7 disabled people from across the UK in leadership positions.
And me.
And yeah, of course, and yourself, yes. But you're pretty independent. You know what you're doing on this one. A lot of them feel confident until they get to work.
Yeah.
And sometimes that can be... I mean, it's a lonely job at the top. We all know that. Yeah. I think you're learning that. Yeah. It's quite a lonely job. And when you're a disabled person, you're battling the societal barriers, but then you're taking those barriers down in your own private life. But then you're going to work and you're trying to destroy barriers on behalf of other disabled people, while still keeping your own head above water.
Yeah.
And that's been a real eye-opener for me in terms of learning about their experiences that they've passed on to me. So I think it's important that if you're in that position, to be able to support people and get them through those difficult times, because they could become the role models and the disability champions of tomorrow, which is what we need more of that, don't you think? We need Definitely. Much more. We need more role models in terms of disabled people. When I was growing up as a disabled person, I couldn't switch on the TV and find anyone that had my impairment or looked like me, and I could say I want to be like that disabled person. It was only when I joined an organisation like Disability Direct that I looked around me and looked sideways at the energy of disabled people, and I think that's where we want to be. So,
it's also, for me, I think one of the things that I've learned as well, and while we're shaping the future, you were at the helm of Disability Direct for over 30 years, and I am putting together a 30-year plan. I've got that much ambition for the people in the organisation today, the businesses that support the organisation today, that have been born out of Disability Direct and entrepreneurialism within the organisation. But one person's disability is not the same to another's. Yeah. I think we have an expectation in society that we look to Paralympians as role models. And that, don't get me wrong, they're awesome, right? Absolutely. But I think there's something about having some simple, everyday role models. Yeah. Because I know at times it takes guts and gore and resilience and truckloads of positivity for some people just to get out of bed, for some people to pick up the phone and have that conversation that says, I need this and I'm entitled to this.
Yeah.
And I think we need to be careful that we don't put disabled people or their disabilities in a certain box, because you know, because you will have seen it yourself. One person's cerebral palsy experience is not the same as another's.
Absolutely.
One person's amputee is not the same as another's, and one person's mental health or neurodiversity is not. There are so many different shades of what everybody has to navigate through every day.
And that's important. You mentioned Paralympians earlier on, and the social model, and these kind of issues, they come to the surface every 4 years when it comes to the Paralympics. And you see the vast majority of disabled people out there, they don't know what the social model is. They've never heard of it.
No.
You and I will, because it's part of our day job. We've lived and breathed.
You taught it to me.
Yeah,
I didn't know.
Exactly.
I didn't know.
And so the vast majority out there, 90+% of disabled people, the social model means nothing to them. They're living and breathing the societal barriers and prejudice, but they don't actually understand the term, what it means. And the Paralympics does something every 4 years, and I've experienced this, in that the media suddenly elevate disabled people to this position that they can do everything. They can do anything. What's stopping you? What's holding you back? And I've always had to say, well, those Paralympians, had investment in them, time and finance to get them to that stage. Otherwise, they're as disabled as the next person.
Yeah.
So, I think the issue there is we mustn't just say, well, Paralympians can achieve this, so all disabled people can achieve something in life. It's all about the structures and infrastructure around each disabled person. So I think that's an important point for us to make. And one of the strengths of DD is that you're right. It's never actually, put everybody in categories and boxes and pigeonholed people. Yeah. So that's been a strength. So long may that continue.
I think one of the things that we're sort of working up at the moment with the team is how we have a more holistic view of a disabled person that comes to us for support. So we sort of identified 3 pillars, if you like, within that person's life. One is financial, and as you say, that's about the access to being able to do some of those things as well, and them living valuable lives that they are entitled to live. Then we look at the physical. And again, you talked about it in terms of the opportunity that a Paralympian has. This is about access to sport, access to things that will take somebody out of their house and not feel compromised, and access to a social structure and a community and all of the things that may be what will stimulate them and actually enable them to go back into a workplace if they've been out of it, or to do more, or to have an entrepreneurial idea that somebody gets behind. So the physical is really important. And that's not just, their housing or their adaptations or things like that. It's about how we deal with the physical, how the DWP deals with the physical and how we look at people. And then the final pillar for me is them as a person, and that's their well-being and mental health, and how we support them. And again, not everybody's going to come to our doors going to want that support. No. But I want us to be able to offer it. I want us to be able to say, we're not just a quick fix, because we're planning on being here for 30 years time and 30 years beyond that. Like we've had conversations before with people that you met many moons ago, that are still supporters of this charity today. That's the legacy, I think.
It is, and it's great that one of the key things, and I can go shopping on the weekends and come across people who were teenagers when they first came to use our service, and they're now middle-aged themselves, and they're saying, thanks to your organisation, I've done this, or my brother or sister or whatever has achieved this in life. And that's an important thing. And I think I used to have this thing about the ideal scenarios where there is no need for an organisation like Disability Direct, but let's be frank, there's going to be a need for charities and support
There's a need for
services.
loads of us.
Yeah, there
That's
is.
that's the hard thing, and I think that's when, again, that's the other side of, you asked me some of the things I've learned, and it is about that the voluntary sector organisations are shoring up so many of the, I'm going to come out and say it, failings in social care and failings in the NHS, and actually we've got to stop being okay with that.
Yeah.
We've got to stop being okay with that. And only when we come together collaborating as organisations, as disabled people's organisations, to say, no, we can't let this happen.
And this has always been the challenge for
Yeah.
the unique position Disability Direct found itself in, was that it wasn't allowed to campaign.
Yeah.
However, we had the power to educate.
Yeah.
We have this ability to sit around a table with those service providers, whether it's the NHS or whether it's local authorities, and say in so many words, okay, you've got this policy, and whether it's come from central government or whether it's your own local policy, this is where we think you are going to get it wrong.
Yeah. Let us help. I think that's the point.
Yeah.
Let us, because I think there is the problem with, anybody can see it from a local government, central government perspective, all of it. It's a really tricky job that they have to do as well. So the problem is that because there is a constant change of personnel and initiatives in that world, everybody reinvents the world.
Yeah.
Every year, 4 years, whatever, it's that cycle. And so we can be a consistent voice here to say, you know what, we know we've got access to what people need and real life examples. Yeah. So let us be part of the conversation. And I don't just want that conversation for me. I want it to be, every charitable organisation, not-for-profit or CIC, that does something that supports disabled people, their families and carers.
And there's nothing stopping us being the voice. I mean, just in the last week, I've spent some time committed to, by the time this podcast will have gone out, there will have already been a reading in the House of Commons around the assisted dying, dying bill, and I've already had a couple of conversations with the MPs and some of the media, and it's very clear that there's a split in pros and cons.
And it's not party political split either.
Not.
It's not. Really not. That's what I've noticed.
My issue at the moment is that as a society, we still haven't, as successive governments still haven't fixed the independent living for disabled people. So we're already talking about dying. And the big fear amongst disabled people, I've spoken to
it's a really good point. See, we haven't sorted out the living yet. How can we sort out the dying?
You've hit on the NHS, and there's big issues around disabled people trusting the NHS because they don't.
I was going to say
there's a huge amount of mistrust because you can give the example of the pandemic. So many disabled people had do not resuscitate added to their medical files, some without their knowledge, and that kind of tells you how big the gap is between those two bodies. So when you start saying, well, now we're about to introduce a piece of legislation where your death is going to be discussed, that it frightens a lot of disabled people. Yeah. And there are pros and cons. I get both sides of the argument, but you've got to fix disabled people's independent living before you start talking about, that last stage of their life.
Yeah. As you say, it's more a debate about that, conversely, isn't it? Yeah. About, how they live. And again, I think it's not a conscious ignorance or anything like that. It is just there is a lot of education that's needed. And as I said, I've been on that journey myself. And now my disability is I'm in that category of largely a hidden disability, unless you see me get up in the morning or unless you see me after I've sat down for too long or, I've had a bad day. But mostly my disability is hidden now. Yeah. And again, with that, there's so many kind of questions and question marks. And we also go that little bit so far PC or anti-woke or woke, whichever way you want to go. Because I think a lot of people with neurodiversity now are starting to struggle with the labels that lots of society are putting on themselves, because so many people going, oh well, I'm quite ADHD as well, or I'm a bit autistic. That's what people are saying, and they're using that language that says, if you're a parent of a SEND child with autism, you don't just say, my child's got a bit of autism, or I've got a bit of autism. You live and breathe it. You fight every day to get them educated, to get them cared for, to get them supported. And again, there's so many different ways we need to educate, and there's something new every time. So I think we could be having these conversations if we were still around, and I think possibly, I hope we're still around, but not maybe doing this. We will have passed the baton to other people. But there'll be something else in 20 years. There'll be something else. And it's an ongoing thing that we didn't even know about 20 years ago.
And it's labels is a big worry of mine. I must admit, when I first started working in the disability movement, labels weren't a big thing. They have become a bit of an issue now, and that frightens me, worries me a little bit. But I understand there are more new diagnoses of new medical conditions, and people need to understand why things affecting them and how their bodies are and minds are reacting to those conditions. So I get it. But what one of the points you made there about being around in the next 20, 30 years is one thing I did realise. One of the last pieces I wrote in the media as I decided to step down was that in 30 years, I think the journalist asked me what's changed for disabled people, and I said nothing, because there's still discrimination, there's still hate crimes, there's still inequity when it comes to access to services. Society still demonizes disabled people, and when it comes to the benefit system, and there's still disabled people not getting jobs on an equal footing to others, and all there is now is a lot more impairments now for employers to get worried about. Now we've got ADHD. Well, no, I don't think I can employ that person. But what we need, I think, is more and more programs. I've just started on Netflix a series. Was it Netflix? I can't remember. A series. It was on Amazon Prime. A series called The Good Doctor.
Oh right, he's brilliant, isn't he?
And that I found that to be so such a powerful kind of message coming across in that chap's journey as an autistic person who becomes a practicing medical consultant. So that more stories like that is what we need.
What I do have, it's a sobering thing that you say nothing's changed, and at the same token, I think we see it I think we've seen it, and certainly in recent years with Black Lives Matter and other programs and other discrimination that we've seen, is that our children are better than we were.
Yeah.
And we're better than our parents, and each generation gets better. And I think that's the hope I have, is that when we have more representation and more role models and more brilliant companies, because you know what, there are some great businesses out there who are superb at supporting people with disability. And we need to make them role models as well as the people who work in their organisations. Yeah. And I know you've probably done some talks on a few of them. We should probably think about some of those of in a positive way, name and hail them. Instead of name and shame the bad ones, let's name and hail the good ones.
And I find I made this point at one of the last keynote speeches I did a couple of weeks ago. A company just not too far from here booked me to do a keynote speech. I think they were launching their diversity strategy, their EDI strategy, and I thought, okay, I'll do a speech. When I got there, there was about 3 or 4, probably 500 people, maybe, I don't know. I wasn't counting, but it was a jam-packed marquee that they booked, and I was so impressed because they had devoted a whole day towards it.
Yeah.
And they'd actually taken it seriously. It wasn't a tick box, because I come across too many companies that say, all right, can we get you in to do this speech for 10 minutes? And I know that they've booked me and I'm ticking a box, that they've done this, and now they can go back to and feel good about themselves. But that particular company, I was
Whole
just so
day.
impressed that they've done that. And so they need to be celebrated.
Yeah.
You're right, that we're too busy sometimes, bringing down companies who've got it
Lambasting
wrong.
the bad ones,
Yeah.
exactly. No, I quite like that. That's name and hail. That's it.
Absolutely,
Name and
yeah.
hail them. Again, a young man I know who's really struggled with his mental health and was struggling with his work, and he had some time off sick. Very supportive organisation, and he went through and was, eventually, long process, but was eventually stage 1 diagnosed with ADHD and personality disorder. He got absolutely truckloads of support to go back to work in the way and the pace he felt right. He got a personal email from their CEO saying, I've got your back. I think you've done great. I can't believe you've been going through all of this, and yet you've still done this, this, and this, And then the next opportunity obviously made the point of stopping this young man and saying, hi, it's me, this is my office, you know where I am. Because there's something very powerful when it comes from the top, and that's where culture is so important in organisations. Absolutely. That you get that culture right. And we would every day take the opportunity to educate people about what the magic dust is, and actually how you can turn your culture around and, make more money. So lots of CEOs, we're not that dissimilar, still need to make money. That's what the driver is. And actually, that's not just looking at the purple pound of disabled people as customers, but that's actually looking at their contribution to the workplace. That you'd be crazy not to invest in this new thing, this new magical thing. Absolutely, and I really hope that that's something that we can get towards.
Well, I think there's certainly kind of exciting times ahead in terms of there's a lot of concern certainly around disabled people and what's ahead in terms of legislation or services, new services, and cuts to existing services. But I think there are also opportunities for organisations like Disability Direct and other charities, user-led charities across the UK, when it comes to, well, what can we do about this in terms of whatever that our beneficiary group is going through? What can we do about this? And that's where you start thinking laterally. And the strength of this organisation, Disability Direct, has been that it's been able to look at the gaps and fill those gaps. And I'm pretty sure you're going to be able to do that. And you've got a great team behind you. So
I think I've learned a huge amount about the people here as well. They treat the boss differently, by the way, But no, and that's in a good way. I think when I know I've got people's support in this organisation, and I know that because it's grown quite quickly in recent years. I think it was a very steady ship that you ran, but probably in the last 10 years it kind of has certain areas of exponential growth.
Absolutely, yeah.
And with that comes some pains, and again and some things that we need to fix or reform or whatever. And I think and I know nobody's protective of the way we do things. Everybody's open for the change and embracing it, and that's good, because I think that's the point. I'd like to see myself as a change maker for this organisation, but at the same token having that security of what we do as an organisation to be sustainable and to make sure we're still here in at least 30 years to do it.
That's what music to my ears.
Good.
So we're coming to the end. It's been such a fantastic conversation.
It's good, isn't it? Really, and I think we should do this just as part of my learning anyway. I don't mind if you film it or not, actually, but I think when you discuss things, you start to be clear on how we can affect change in the right way.
Yeah.
Totally so thank you.
Well, no, thanks to you, Louise, and watch out for more progress by the charity Disability Direct, www.disabilitydirect.com, and you can find them on social media handles. So just watch this space. Thanks for watching us this week, and at some stage I'll upload the next podcast. See you soon.